So you also wore a sari and went out.
Yeah, there was a process with that, with how I thought I should have this costume. One of the things that I really wanted to include was the color black, and unfortunately, I wouldn't be called dark skinned in this country. Uh, but I feel like skin being associated with beauty is something that was very uh, was very poetic and powerful for me in Draupadi's character, and she's always described as the most beautiful woman with the most beautiful dark skin, you know, because she was dark skinned. Uh, so this was something that I felt both our storytelling in terms of mythology, in terms of the modern day storytelling that you see, whether it's cinema or TV, they've completely done away with the woman who's a dark skinned woman, right? Even in the South, for example, we'd have women who were dark skinned who would play roles, but now there's no role, there's no space for them because it's all Bollywoodized. So we have, you know, actresses coming in from the north, always, you know, playing characters of Tamil women or Malayali women. Of course, Malayalam is a little more like they have some women who play their own characters, but the woman in the South is kind of also being replaced a lot. The dark-skinned woman, you know. So the idea of beauty was something I really wanted to bring in. So I put a lot of black kajal on my entire face, and then I had this big red bindi, and I had a nut, and these were enough for me to really like connect with femininity. I didn't really feel the need to wear a sari or, you know, enhance my you know, bosom, stuff it. I also wanted to, I was flat chested, I just had a veil, and I would walk around with an album which had photographs that I had selected from both Draupadi's life of, you know, marrying 5 Pandavas and everything else that happens to her, and also in my head being the mother of the city of Bangalore and the changes that have been happening to the city. So MG Road from the 80s, which nobody would recognize, you know, photograph of that in the album. So I would show it to somebody saying, see, my home has changed a lot, you know, that kind of stuff. Or I would show, so I had a number of samples, like 5 African men, black men sitting together like Pandavas, and 5 white men sitting together as Pandavas, 5 Indian men. So I would show them and say, you know, so this sometimes I would give them one photograph, sometimes I would lay them all out and say, so you know, tell different parts of the story of the Mahabharata using different photographs, and then switch the photos. So it was fascinating for me to see how people would react to the idea of race and color, male body, effeminate nature. So there were also some, like Bhima was always shown as a very powerful guy, right? So I would have somebody who's not so macho, and I would say, this is Bhima, you know, and he would be a very demure man, or a very, you know, like skinny man, normal man, or even an effeminate man, you know. And people would be like, oh, Bhima can't be like this. Bhima is usually like that, you know. Or Arjuna is valorous. But I would show very, you know, like quietly sitting Arjuna. So I'd had a number of different kinds of photographs I'd play with during conversations with people. And for me, it was a very intimate experience, like how, you know, I can sit and talk to you. Whereas if I'm performing, I'm on the other side and you're on this side. And there's always this table between us, and you know that I am here to perform. But when we are talking and I'm being Draupadi and I'm telling you stories about both Draupadi's life and about my city, in a way I am telling you a lot more about everything that I've told you about my childhood without actually talking about it. In the sense it comes out, my experience of gender, my experience of the city, of spaces. So it was also a very personal narrative in some sense that the character allowed me to play.
And what did people have to say when they heard your story and saw pictures of your husbands?
So there's one incident which, so a lot of men would react with like, oh, you know, like fear and curiosity, and like, who really are you? And you know, men in public spaces, I've noticed this with transgender people, right? Either they're very scared, or they feel there is some potential for something to develop, which is a illicit affair, right? Like either you could go behind the wall and, you know, get the person to kiss you, or give you a blow job, or, you know, give you some, you know, pass the, you know, get some money or something. So like men, the way they negotiate public space, I don't want to stereotype. There have been some men who've just stood and looked at me and in awe, and then heard my story and then walked away in silence. But often men do that, and with women, they would not come too close. So I had to go towards women a lot more. And it was difficult because then some of them would get scared. A few of them would not listen, because women have this thing in public space where for them, if they can't pay too much attention because everything has to be avoided, especially with strangers. So anything that I was saying, they would not listen. There was already a wall, even if I was very close. So the streets, once or twice when I tried it, it was a very difficult space. So I chose a couple of occasions where people would meet, and in a way it was a contained space. One was a LGBT carnival. It's called the Pride Mela. It happens around the Pride March, where people gather. A lot of different kinds of people come, not just the LGBT crowd. So there, I put myself in there, and I spoke to a lot of different kinds of people. There were also men who were walking on the street who saw this colorful pandal and everything, and they just had walked in. Then they saw me, and they started talking to me. And then they saw the albums, and we would have nice conversations about the city. A lot of conversations with low income groups, right? Men especially, was always about class. Right? When I showed them about the city, the streets for them meant class, and this economic shift in terms of where they were and where the others were. So they would always talk about how it's difficult in Bangalore today, and a lot of them did not know this Bangalore that I was showing them also from the 80s, other photographs. One very powerful incident that I feel with a woman who came up to me, and she just sat next to me, and we weren't even looking. There was no eye contact. I was sitting this way and she was sitting, and we were looking just straight and telling our story. So I began telling her, I don't know what the trigger was, so I began telling her about Draupadi's abuse in the full court, where she's disrobed. And I didn't narrate the incident, but I just spoke to her about what I felt, whose eyes were looking at me, and why they were looking at me, and where they were looking at me, and who I felt was trying not to look at me in court. But I knew that there was something filthy running through their heads, and who I felt was really feeling really bad about this, what was happening to me. This is my perception of who could have felt this amongst my husbands, amongst people in the court, Duryodhana, Dushasan, all these people. Halfway through the story, she interrupted me, and she told me something I think she probably wouldn't even have told her therapist, which was a very deep, personal incident of sexual abuse. And for me, it was I didn't know what to do with that, but I felt very humbled. But there was some kind of exchange of energy. It wasn't an awkwardness that suddenly now as a performer I was feeling. I felt like I had a true exchange where I had shared as Draupadi my humiliation, and she shared it back, and there was a healing of sorts. So for me, it was a very special moment, which I remember even now, with what happened with this woman.
Okay, you want some tea, because some
Yes.
heavy words you use, I'm not comfortable. So I'll make some tea
Yes,
for
I'd
you.
love some tea. Maybe
Okay.
it'll help me also digest some of these heavy words.
And for me too.